Well, boils and ghouls, it's your old pal, John Kassir, the voice of the Crypt Keeper. And I want to welcome my good fiends of the Horror Heals podcast. Is horror good for mental wellness? But of course it is. I delight in the delicious deaths of pitiful people on the silver screen. So get ready for a hell of a good time with my new fiends, Cory and Kendall, on the Horror Heals podcast.
Welcome back, horror lovers. It's your favorite Scream team, Cory and Kendall, coming to you with another episode of Horror Heals. And today, we've got a guest who's not only bringing the scares, but also some serious stage flair. Jack from Horrorshow Art.
Cory was stalking Jack's Instagram all night like it was the last person standing in a slasher flick. He couldn't get enough of Jack's bloody good mask creations.
First of all, guilty as charged. And second, I mean, come on, when you see those gory blood-soaked masks, how could you not? But seriously, we're excited for our listeners to hear how horror helped Jack, especially during the COVID lockdown when, let's be real, it felt like we were all trapped in our own little horror.
Oh yeah, it was like a global cabin fever. But Jack didn't just sit around baking banana bread, he went into full horror artist mode. So if you're listening and thinking, what's in it for me? Well, buckle up, because today we're diving into how horror can not only give you the creeps, but also heal your mental scars. Plus, expect some Evil Dead love and maybe even a chat about what Coronation Street would look like with a supernatural spin.
Don't sleep on this episode, folks, or Freddy will find you. Seriously though, if you've ever felt like an outsider or found solace in horror, this one's for you. And I promise, if you skip this, the FOMO will haunt you worse than any ghost.
Hey Jack, welcome to Horror Heals.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
For sure. Just to kick things off, how does our theme of horror and helping our mental wellness relate to your personal experience?
Horror has always been something that's very prevalent in my life. Since I was a child, I was always attracted to. We used to go to the video rental places, which of course are completely defunct. But one of my favorite things, on a Friday night, we'd go down there, and my family would be off in the other corner choosing a family movie, and I'd be stood in the horror section just staring at those cassettes. And I think of, when nowadays when you sit and you choose a streaming title, I think of it as the same experience of me just staring at the box art on the cassettes, which is nowadays is nowhere near as good. So I always was drawn to that and attracted to that. I would say I was a horror fan growing up, and then for the rest of my life. And then when lockdown happened, I sort of retreated into horror. It then became my everything and my pretty much all I was willing to consume, all I would read, all I would listen to, all I would watch, all I would engage with in my art and my craft and stuff. That's where you find me in a current situation where the majority of the things I do is to do with or geared towards horror. So yeah.
Well, I imagine lockdown had to be a very stressful time for you and those in your craft as a live performer. Of course, that's the first thing to get shut down. Would you say horror kind of helped your mental wellness through that? The uncertainty of when are we going to get back on the stage?
Yeah, 100%. I was sort of lucky. I was luckier than most in that I was already attached to quite a big project. And then when lockdown happened, the day lockdown happened, the producer of the musical that I was in called me and said, "Hey, don't worry. As soon as we can, we will." And she said, "Try and stay in London, because London's really expensive area to live. It's quite difficult to make your living here if you're doing something in the arts." But she said, "Do your best. See what you can do." So then I did the obligatory baked banana bread and and put my feet up and tried to enjoy it. And then I started to feel like I need to do something. I want to produce something now. I'm getting a bit fed up of, because I always drew. I've drawn all my life, and that was always horror stuff. I started doing digital art on my iPad, and I was like, okay, from there I'm going to start making stickers. So I bought a printer, and I would produce my own stickers and sell them on Etsy, and that was really fun. Then I came across a video of Tommy Lee Wallace from the original Halloween. He was in charge of the mask, essentially, and I found this video that Sean Clark made of him taking a Captain Kirk mask and converting it into a Michael Myers mask. And I said, I want to do that. That's fun. That looks really, really fun. Just for me, I just want one for myself. I love like authentic screen used molds and things. It makes me so excited. So I thought, okay, I'm going to find a Kirk. So I bought a Trick or Treat Studios Kirk, and I converted it. And then from doing all this research, I discovered that there was a community of artists who were doing that full time. And I thought, oh yeah, hang on, this might be it. This might be the way to combine all the things that I love. So then I got into mask work from there, and I've been pretty much I've had this sort of double life of mask work by day and then West End shows by night ever since.
We were looking at your Instagram yesterday, and yes, I mean a lot of images of masks on there. Is it fair for me to draw the parallel of horror and masks and wearing a mask when you're performing as a character on stage?
Yeah, I think so. It's one of the big talked about things with acting, and I think the reason it's quite talked about is because it's true, is that I feel actors really relish that time to play pretend and be somewhere else, someone else, so they don't have to be themselves. I don't necessarily think all actors are messed up and need to do that, but I think we've tapped into something. I think that we're quite lucky to get to do that, and I sort of think if everybody got the opportunity to do that, people might be able to manage their troubles a little bit better, because there's a real catharsis that comes with acting. All my life I've loved masks. I've been drawn to masks, and I think if 10-year-old me could see the collection that 30-year-old me has, then he would burst into tears. So some of the things that I own.
Some of the stuff that you've got on your site, kind of trends toward the more extreme, gory stuff, like faces being cut off and things like that. Like, what are you drawn to for horror? Like, what are your genres?
What are my genres? Funnily enough, the more extreme gore, I don't really enjoy like the Saw films, the Hostels, the torture porn stuff. That don't really do it for me. Some of them, the originals, like Hostel's quite good. I thought Saw was actually really good. But then when the producers go, aha, we just do that again and again, I'm sort of like, well, no, you gotta try and keep me. So yeah, I think more so I'm drawn to, 80s horror, I'd say, if I had to. 80s horror encompasses so many genres, but it is its own genre in itself because it's so distinct in what it does. So I love 80s, and I think a lot of the stuff that I work on harkens back to that. Even like the new Michael Myers masks, they all harken back to that original slasher movie blank face. But the blood, my Insta page is full of blood. I have a YouTube channel where I talk about my processes, and I often joke about I love the blood. I'll finish a piece. That character might not particularly require blood, but if I find one screenshot where that character has a bit of blood coming out of their mouth, then my mask will I'll have to have the blood. I think it always just makes a piece look really cool. So yeah, I think my work does tend to lean towards the gore. I think it's because I think I'm good at it. I think my blood's quite realistic, so I'm quite pleased with it. So I use it on everything.
Have you sought out any roles in horror themed productions? Of course there's Dracula, and you mentioned your Italian Greyhound named Dracula.
Yes,
and there's quite a few just like adaptations of films, and like Evil Dead the musical, and I believe there was a Silence of the Lambs production. And are you drawn to that kind of performance? Do you want to perform in a horror theme?
Yes, definitely. Nothing would bring me greater joy than to marry my two passions. There's a current at the moment here in the UK. They're testing out a play of Paranormal Activity, and I really wanted to do it. I asked my agent, and we I don't know. They didn't want to see me. It didn't work. I was considered for the Silence of the Lambs musical, but I didn't want to do it because it was out of town and I wanted to be at home. Evil Dead the musical, it hasn't happened in the UK yet. Now, Evil Dead is my favourite franchise, horror franchise, and that hasn't happened here yet. And I briefly considered, I'm in a little bit of an in-betweeny space with my work at the moment. I finished a very long job. I finished that in May, And then I was told to try and sort of stay free for January time because of another big job coming up. But if I was completely free, I think I would have taken the time to pursue getting Evil Dead the musical to happen over here. But I'm also a writer. I do, you know, I try and channel my passions wherever I can. So when I finished the West End show I was just in, I did really well. I won an award, and it was I got a lot of like acclaim from it, which then sort of got me in a lot of rooms that were quite interesting, and I got invited to pitch some of my ideas to quite a big production company here in the UK. And I went in to pitch, and I pitched 5 things. I made them a pitch deck. I had it on the iPad, and I read them out. 5 ideas. And after it was finished, the 2 guys went, "Oh, so horror then?" And I sort of looked at my pitch deck. I scrolled through. I said, "Oh yeah, it's all of the 5 horror ideas." I hadn't even realised that that's all I'd given them. But yes, and it's looking like a couple of my ideas might come to fruition. So I may soon get to combine those 2 big passions, which is going to be, what a treat, living the dream, you know? You can't put a price on that.
What about film or TV work? I mean, the horror is just, it just gets bigger and bigger every year. It's a growing multi-billion-dollar thing. Are you interested in doing any kind of screen work?
Yes, definitely. I'd like to be able to say I was in one of my favourite franchises. So if I could be in an Evil Dead film, a Halloween film, an adaptation of a Stephen King story. A lot of the work that I do, especially when acting is concerned, is about legacy, and I got to do that really cool thing. So yeah, I think especially I'd love to do some horror film and TV, especially in the franchises that I love. I tell you what, I always wanted to do. I always wanted to be like Doug Jones and be like a makeup effects person. I consider myself a character actor more so than if I had to give myself a casting bracket. So I thought, yeah, I want to be that. I want to be the guy that's always covered in all the makeup. And I did this immersive Halloween event, and they made me up like an alien in all these prosthetics. And I've never been so miserable in all my life. I wanted to pull my face off, the fake face, and then the real face. I was miserable. I'll tell you exactly what happened. It's horrible. They put this alien prosthetic, and it was all sealed at my mouth, and my nose was in there, and there were no nose holes. And within 5 minutes of me wearing it, I sneezed into the prosthetic. Yeah, and I was in it for about 4. I was only in it for about 4 hours, but I was miserable. Nobody could speak to me. I was supposed to be interacting with the public, and I couldn't speak. I was too annoyed. So I don't think I could be the next Doug Jones, unfortunately.
Have you met Doug Jones? He's a sweetheart.
No. Do you know, in the UK, the horror convention scene, I feel, is only just starting to bubble up, and I'm yet to go to one. I'm never free. There's a big one happens here every year called For the Love of Horror, and this might be the year when I finally go, because I've got so many friends and this is the other thing, speaking of mental health, it's the friends I've made in this community was completely unexpected. I just thought, I'll share my art. I have my personal Instagram and I have my horror Instagram. And I'm on my horror Instagram infinitely more than I'm on my personal. I rely on it. I love it. So I want to go and meet some of those friends at a convention one day. That would be a real treat. That's another reason I want to be in a big horror franchise, so I can go to conventions.
Yeah, I mean, that's my 2 happy places are horror conventions and the beach. Those are my happiest places. So I'm going to put a couple of thoughts into your head to think about. One, I know Kendall would absolutely love this because it would be mixing 2 of his favorite things, but perhaps you could pitch a supernatural storyline to Coronation Street.
Oh, God.
Oh, my goodness. Well, there's got to be ghosts on that street, hasn't there?
They've tried
There's
it.
got to be.
They've tried it a few times, but
yeah, they do little jaunts into it, don't they? I haven't watched it in years. I used to watch it with my grandparents. There's got to be. That street's got to be full of ghosts. I know that they sometimes do it in like a touching way. EastEnders is another popular soap opera here, and they did a thing where one of the really iconic staple characters, she was an older lady. She was leaving the series because she actually had dementia in real life. And so they decided to have her character die, but the way that they had her die was that the ghost of her best friend, who'd also died, who was an actress who was still alive, went and sat at the kitchen table with her and had a chat. And I'm like, no! Do some scary stuff.
Well, I can safely say that Kendall is America's biggest Cory fan.
Yeah.
I think.
Wow, I didn't anticipate this. That's great. I love
bizarre.
That.
I was watching it 15 minutes before we were speaking with you.
Oh
really?
Yeah, he'll go back and watch. He'll go back to the 50s and 60s and 70s and like He's like, oh, and this is when this happened, and this
Hey.
is when this happened.
Hey, honey, it started in 1960.
Okay, sorry.
So,
Well, sorry.
not
You know,
not the
gotta
50s.
go to the expert here. I think he's secretly a nan. I think he
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Well, yeah, that's how Cory keeps going here in the UK. It's the grandmas.
Absolutely.
All right. So the other bug I want to put in your ear is that I think we need more LGBTQ plus representation in horror. Are any of your concepts going down that path?
A couple of my concepts are anthology, and the reason that I mean, I've always loved anthology. I love all of the 70s, The House That Dripped Blood, the Dr. Terrible's House of, all of those, Amicus films. I love them. So I've always wanted to engage in that because then you can tell so many stories. And I think that the LGBT narrative is it's both ingrained in horror, and then it's also perfect for horror. It's because it's about outsiders. There's so often I'm surprised I'll return to a film that I saw sort of 10 years ago, and I know more now. The older you get, the sort of more you know, and the more you can consider, I feel. I'll return to a film I haven't seen in years, and I'll go, God, that film's so gay. I didn't realize how gay it was. Do you know what? This might seem a silly one to you, but I watched Jennifer's Body yesterday. I haven't watched it in years. I didn't enjoy it first time I watched it, but I thought it was quite good yesterday. And I thought, my goodness, this film is so gay. And at the time, and I look at it and I'm like, how did I think it ever wasn't? I mean, there's the scene. Megan Fox and Amanda Seyfried kiss, of course. But to me, it was the whole story is about their love for each other, not just like that one moment of tension, which is probably what I perceived it as then. But I look now and I'm like, no, it's about confronting, and it's about these it's about society's expectations of Jennifer and who Jennifer really is. It's fascinating.
We'll have to revisit that one because I haven't watched it since it first came out, and again, I didn't love it then. I was like, it was fine.
No.
But yeah, I think it's definitely worth a rewatch. Then we're doing a lot of that now for the podcast because we're trying to explore different themes of different anxieties and phobias and things like that, and how the different movies help with that. So yeah, that's a good one to add to our growing list.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me know. Let me know what you think, because I just was by the end of it I was like, I can't believe I missed all that. Well, the same thing. This will make you laugh. The same thing. I mean, when I must have been, when I was first watching all of the Nightmare on Elm Streets, I think I was like 13 or something. But Nightmare on Elm Street 2 went right over my head. Years later, I watched that and I was like, oh, no, okay, this is a gay movie. My goodness. And of course, there's been that really, really insightful documentary. But yeah, that went over my head at the time.
Yeah, I'm right there with you because I was probably around 12 or 13 when I watched the first couple of movies, and loved the first one, and the second one was like, and then of course we rewatched it many a time, and they touch on that. I mean, that's one of the gayest horror films ever. I mean, they do a really good job of talking about that in the really long Nightmare on Elm Street documentary. I think it's like 4 hours long, and then Mark Patton's Scream Queen documentary, fantastic. Yeah, he's on our list of people we want to have on the podcast. Absolutely.
Oh yeah. When I was like you when I first saw Nightmare on Elm Street 2, I was like, because to me I was like, they haven't stuck with the lore. They've confused it a bit. But then watching it years later with that added lens makes me enjoy it more. I have a bit more reverence for it. Even though it wasn't kind what they were trying to do, it still makes me enjoy it because I'm much more interested in exploring that theme than whether the intent was good or not. I'm still excited about sitting there and sitting with that than I am with Nancy. Nancy's good and reads books, and now she has to go and fight Freddy. Okay, good for her.
Well, I think we've taken that movie back, part 2.
I think so.
We've owned it, and so it's definitely got a special place for sure.
In relation to your mental health and how you feel horror has helped you, and I said, well, I think now in my adult life, I am definitely on a quest to heal my inner child, and I think every little piece that I buy, everything that I saw in movies that I thought, wow, I want to touch that, and I now have in my home, I think I'm sort of giving my inner child some attention and going, look, we get all the toys because we weren't very well off. I grew up quite poor, had a somewhat turbulent home life. My parents were divorced, but it was amicable and it was great. They did their best. But I was also a little bit of an outsider. I wasn't very sporty and stuff like that. So, I wouldn't say I had the happiest childhood, but I think that I'm healing that little boy one prop at a time.
Yes, you're embracing your second childhood now, which is fantastic.
Definitely.
Wow, that's great.
Now this is the problem because I live in London. I live in a rented house, and I'm rapidly running out of pieces, and I've only got more stuff on the way. Some really cool things I've got on the way. I've just ordered a mask of Fluffy from Creepshow, the Crate Beast. It's a finished mask, but I'm gonna rework it, and I want to in reworking that I want to make it's already a head. I want to make like shoulders and make it into a full quite big bust. I've got a big Pennywise wall hanger on the way. I haven't got any wall to hang. I can't put pins in the wall, nails in the walls, not my walls. And I've got a Barlow from Salem's Lot coming as well. And those are all on the way, but I've got nowhere to put any of them. I don't know. Well, that's it. My poor girlfriend, she's right along with me where it's all she'll watch, and she dips her toe into. She's got like a Chucky t-shirt and a Michael Myers t-shirt that she likes to wear. Whereas me, every other day I'm wearing my Evil Dead t-shirts. But she kind of draws the line at certain things, leaking. She calls it leaking. She's like, your studio is leaking.
I think we have a 6.5-foot Freddy Krueger in our basement. And
oh, wow.
The other night, I don't know why, I was walking past and it caught my peripheral vision. And it's just comical. I'm like, how long has this thing been here? And it's still startling at times. It's a really good one.
It's that sort of like, it must be like a chemical thing within your body going, no, this doesn't matter how used to it you are. There's still a 6.5-foot man standing there like with his finger knives ready to get you. Yeah. I do that every Halloween. I have a mannequin that I kind of interchange. He's Michael Myers. He's Halloween Kills Michael Myers at the moment, and I'll put him in the window with the light shining on him for Halloween. I think this year if my Pennywise mask arrives in time, I might do Pennywise, or I might do. I have a cool Sasquatch mask. I might do a big Sasquatch and put him in the bushes.
I love it.
Well, I mean, I can't wait until you do your first horror project so you can start going to the conventions because, I mean, the cosplay is out of this world. And I will send you a photo. I know I've got a couple photos, but there is a guy who does the full Fluffy in the crate and it's on wheels.
I've seen. Okay, yeah, I've seen. He was. I don't know what. There's a convention on this weekend, and somebody was taking a picture in there this weekend. That's brilliant. That's really good.
Fantastic. Well, the final question that we ask every guest is, who is your favorite final person in a horror movie?
I think I'll have to go with Ash Williams from the Evil Dead franchise. I think possibly. I mean, I love Ash in Evil Dead 1 because I love his sort of naivety. I love how kind of there's always a point with those final characters where they're in control. They reclaim, they take back. Ash never does that in Evil Dead 1. He's tortured because they want to torture him, and I love him for that. I think my heart goes out to him in that film. Then in the second film, I love watching his sort. He does reclaim and he takes back, and I love that. And then in the third film, he's just a dick. By that point, I'm like, yeah, I'm on your side. You're all right. You're all right by me, fella. But yeah, I love Ash, and I think I go with that because that is my favorite franchise. It was the original Evil Dead. I watched it when I was far too young to watch it, and my mum was just cool with things like that. My mum was just like, oh, whatever, as long as you're not having nightmares, and I wasn't, so it's fine. So yeah, I have so much love and reverence for those stories. So I'm happy to go with Ash.
I thought you were going to say that, and you're the second person to say Ash. And because we're going to have a tally going, we'll be putting on our Instagram and everything. But it's been interesting. Like, I've been able to sort of guess, I think, more than half. But some people have surprised us.
Do you know who's leading the tally?
I think right now it's Laurie Strode.
Okay, yeah. Unfortunately, Halloween Ends has made me lose a bit of respect for Laurie Strode.
It took a weird turn. I mean, I have appreciation for it. I would just rewatch that one not that long ago. And one of the main characters is named Cory, so how could I not, watch it again?
Yeah.
The narcissist in me.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was like they just kind of did a 180.
It's the arc that they gave that character. It's when she's like the disgrace of the town, but she's still carving pumpkins with a big grin on her face. I'm not quite rooting for that. I don't know. I tell you who I like. I love Ginny in Friday the 13th Part 2. Amy Steele. She'd be my second choice. I think she's brilliant. I think the way they wrote that character, that it's also seeded how interested she is in child psychology. To go from that to, she just wants to work with kids at a camp, to realizing that this man is a giant child dressing up as his mother to confuse him. Genius. Love that character. That's such a fun little
quick
arc.
Story, and this kind of relates to our existing podcast, Family Twist. But when we first came to New England from California to meet Kendall's birth family that we found through a DNA test, it was in October, and there was a horror convention in Massachusetts. And so we took the whole family to this horror convention, and Amy was there and told her the story, and she was so sweet about it, and just wrote a really nice thing on my Friday the 13th poster that I've got like 30 autographs on now. And then met her again a couple of years later. I introduced my cousin to horror conventions, and we have a photo with her wearing the Mrs. Voorhees dirty sweater and the head on the
Wow.
So yeah, again, Amy, you're on the list. If you're listening, come on the show.
Oh yeah, so they've got that original Mrs. Voorhees head. Somebody found the real prop and 3D scanned it and made a mold of that, and there is screen used or screen accurate Mrs. Voorhees heads in the world, but there's about 15, and the person made 15, and that's all they made, and you can't get them. They're like gold dust, but I really want them.
That would be great. Yeah, because I've reached out to a couple of artists about, I would love to have a Mrs. Voorhees head. But I just haven't.
There's some gorgeous replicas, but you can get the real deal.
Yeah, maybe somebody will recreate that mold and do it again. That would be.
Yeah, I hope so. That's why I love Trick or Treat Studios. I love what they're doing. If they can, they use the screen use molds, and I think, oh my god, this is unheard of. This is such a treat for fans.
Absolutely. Well, we love what you're doing, and definitely stay in touch. Excited to hear more about your project coming in 2025, and fingers crossed that you maybe between now and then you get to maybe there's a horror movie you could pop into.
Yeah, I'd love that, or at least get to a convention at some point.
We'll have to go to a horror con together.
Yeah, definitely. I'd love that.
Excellent, cool. Jack. Enjoy this beautiful sunny day in London, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you. Lovely to speak to you.
Well, that was a bloody good time, wasn't it? Huge thanks to Jack for joining us today. I think we learned that the only thing scarier than one of his masks is the idea of missing out on his art.
And Jack, we loved hearing how horror became your creative outlet during the COVID lockdown. You turned isolation into imagination, and that's what we're all about here. Horror as a way to process life's nightmares.
If today's episode gave you life or death, do us a favor and share it with your friends, your family, maybe even your enemies. Let's spread that horror love.
And don't forget to leave a review. I know we sound like a broken record, but trust me, it helps with that podcast algorithms. And more importantly, it helps more people find horror heals. Think of it like leaving breadcrumbs for other horror fans to find their way home before the killer gets them.
Also, we want to hear from you. Who do you want us to chat with next? Got a horror story of your own, a favorite final person? Hit us up. Is horror good for our mental wellness? Of course it is.
So go on, follow us on social media, leave us a review, and stay spooky. We'll catch you next time. Now, if you excuse us, Cory has some Instagram stalking to do.
It's called research.
Sure, whatever you say.
The Horror Heals podcast is produced and presented by How the Cow Ate the Cabbage, LLC.